everyone, Peter Hewitt, la-artistino here. In this colour along we are using one of the pictures from Lizzie Mary Cullen's The Magical City and colouring it in with Inktense pencils. In part 1 we did the background, in part 2 and part 3 we did the building, and now we're going to work on this bottom section here. I'm going to start with the leaves, and for the leaves I've chosen 3 colours. I've got here the sherbet lemon, the spring green, and a colour that I picked up recently, bright blue. I'm going to start with these smooth edged leaves here, and just as we did in the leaves on part 1, I'm going to add the lightest colour, in this case the sherbet lemon first, as a highlight section. So if you remember, because it's a highlight section, it'll be where the light is hitting it the most from above. So the sherbet lemon will be concentrated mainly on the top section of the leaf, the uppermost section of the leaf, and a little bit running down the middle of Okay, those are those leaves. Now these other leaves, the spiky ones, I want to contrast a little bit, so I'm going to pick different colours. And I've got the feeling I want to put a bit of a browny, autumny, orangey look into them. So we'll look for colours that will do that trick. For these other spiky leaves, I've chosen beech green, Sicilian yellow, baked earth, and red oxide. Okay, let's start. Now I want the leaves to look like they're going brown at the tips, but they're still a little bit green at the base. So I'll take the beech green and I'll just pop just a little smear of it right at the base, remembering that a little goes a long way with Inktense pencils. Then I'll take my next colour, which is the Sicilian yellow, and I'll add that to the bulk of the leaf, because what I'll do is I'll smear this green throughout to make it to tinge it a little bit greenish, a yellowish green colour of a leaf that's just starting to turn. Or rather, it's not just starting to turn, I think it's progressing fairly rapidly. There we go. Okay, the next one along is the baked earth, so we'll start to pop that right at the outer edges of the leaf. And with the red oxide, just a few little dabs here and there right on the ends. Okay, now taking the water brush, we want to start activating the yellow first, and I'm going to drive it up into the baked earth ends here. Make sure your water brush is fairly juicy, not too much, not so it's puddling your water, but that you're getting a nice continuous flow. Now you can grab this green and start dragging it into the yellow area, just to tinge it green. There we go. That looks a little light to me. I might go back over that green. So I'll pop a bit more green in here and a bit more yellow before I start with the others. Okay, once again, we'll do the yellow going into the brown. Yeah, that's a bit brighter now. And spreading that green out a little bit. There, that's better. I think we're missing the green. I'll go over that first leaf and bring it back out again. but I'll let that dry a little bit first. The beauty with Inktense is that if you do go over a little bit light and you want to darken it, is you can just layer straight over the top of what you've done after it's dry without any concern about it shifting. The Inktense pencils will not reactivate when you add water to them again after they dry, as they dry permanently, unlike watercolour pencils that don't. And it depends on what your particular style and techniques are as to which medium you would prefer. I like these ones. I like watercolour pencils too, but I really like these ones. Now if you like, and I'm going to, you can add some little spots onto your leaf. As you know, little leaves that are turning might have a few little spots on them. Just pick up your ink straight from your pencil, and with this one I have got the Baked Earth pencil. I'm just dropping in some little spots. It's a nice easy little detail. fairly good distribution of the chili red. Now looking again, I've got a lot of lighter highlight sections, and then underneath these flaps here I've got darker sections, and then generally the flower is darker down the bottom than it is at the top where it'd be catching more of the light. Okay, now I'm going to take my Shiraz, which is quite a bit darker. It's got a sort of a purplish look to it. I'm going to use this just to touch in some of the shadows. So right underneath where these petals sit on top of one another, and where the flaps of petals hanging over each other would cast a bit of a shadow. Again, go darker at the bottom of the flower and a bit lighter at the top of the flower. This will help to give the picture, the flower, some dimension, make it feel a little bit more 3D. I'm not going into the yellow sections just yet. I'm just concentrating on shading the red parts of the flower. I'm going to take my water brush and start activating it. As you can see, got a nice distribution of colour here. We've got darker areas that are the sort of areas you'd expect to be in shade, and the lighter areas where you expect to be more exposed to the light. So again, we start at the lighter areas and pull down. With the yellow, be careful not to mix too much of the red into it, because otherwise the yellow will turn orange. So do the yellow and the lighter parts of the flower first, move into the dark areas, and always wipe off your brush as well before you go again into a lighter area. I'm just making little circles along the border between the red and the yellow, because I want it to mix up a little bit and blend it, but I don't want to pull the red into the yellow too much. Just a little bit of a merge there, and that's it. See, I'm wiping off my brush every few seconds, just so I don't contaminate the lighter colours too much with the darker colours. So I don't want the Inktense to start looking muddy. I want to keep the nice pure colours, only mixing a little bit where I want it. go, there's our rose done. Now, I've been thinking about this dark purple. I think I just might add little touches of it right into the little cracks and crevices here. Don't want it too dark actually. Just lighten that out a little bit. Just to make it pop a little bit more. You don't need much. Okay, and let's go with the thistle. Maybe leave a little margin of white here, just so it looks like the sun's striking the top, to make it a little bit lighter. Okay, let's see how that works out. Get your brush, make sure it's nice and juicy and clean, and we'll start. Start by just dragging out the thistle, the fuchsia from the centre, leaving the centre white, but just fade it in a little bit so there's a nice gradient. And then pull it out. Find a little bit of a swirl action with the brush, helps to dissolve the ink and leaves a smoother finish. You won't get a completely smooth finish with Inktense, it just doesn't work that way, not on this paper, but you can get it pretty good. It's got a bit of texture and I don't mind it. What you want to avoid doing is leaving any defined lines in something that's supposed to be smooth. Contamination there from the yellow, but no, I don't think I'm going to be worried too worried about it. Let's do the centre bit. Again, I think we'll make this sort of like an orangey, browny yellow sort of feel. So I'll start actually with a little bit of sun yellow. So that's a bit of sun yellow, and I might chuck in a bit of willow as well. Notice I've left a little halo of white just there that I don't want to contaminate. I'll blend the brown into the yellow there. There. It's nice and natural. Now I want to give it a little bit of shade, so once again I'm going to go back to my dusky purple and just dab a little bit of it in, start off with that, and then I'll just pick it up off the brush I think after this, just so that I've got a little bit of shadow between some of these leaves, just to separate them a little bit. Maybe down that section there. Little bit of shadow around that central bit of the flower makes it looks like it's pushed in the petals a little bit, makes it pop out from the petals that surround it, I should say. There. There we go, that gives it a bit more dimension. I think I'm running out of water on my brush, I'll have to go refill it. Getting drier and drier the more I work with it. It's done very well. So far this entire picture, part 1 and part 2, has been done with only 1 load of water in this brush. I haven't refilled it since, but I think it needs refilling now. Next we're going to fill in these little branches, and for that I'm going to use fern and some light olive for a bit of shading. Now I want to keep this looking a bit lighter at the top where the sun would strike it. I'm more concentrating my colouring on either side to give it a pipe-like appearance, a rounded appearance. Don't worry so much about that on the thinner areas. It's a bit hard to get a nice sort of rounded highlight in the centre. Just more so on this first big area here, and a little bit of highlights along this piece here. I'll do these little branches as well the same. That's the fern, and now we'll use the light olive to put in the shadows. Just a little bit around the base there and the bit that goes behind and underneath. Sides of the steps. The sides of the steps will have to be a bit darker because they're more in shade, and the tops of the steps will be a bit lighter because they're being more exposed to the sun. Now, to give a nice 3D effect, I'm going to make it a little bit darker down up this end and a bit lighter up this end, so it looks like it's going away from you. So this part will look like it's closer to you and this part will look like it's further away. I'm also going to be using only a small amount of oak. I don't want a dark intense colour here. I just want it to stay fairly pale, as cement in steps are sort of very close to white. They're a bit more like an off grey, browny, off white. So we don't want a really dark brown in there. So I'll start off with just a little layer here, very soft, of the oak. Coming around, these are all the tops of the steps here. I think the first time we see the side of the step is here, and then there's another one here. So the tops of the steps will just do all the same. Make it just a little bit darker in here where it'd be shadowed. The side of the step will have to be a little bit darker to suggest that the sun isn't hitting it quite so much. It's out of direct sunlight, but once again we'll make it a little bit lighter as it comes around here and the darkest around there. Now we're getting very close to this spine bit. In my book it kind of sticks up a little bit, so if you want to get really in you have to hold it down while you do it. It's fairly sturdy binding. I haven't had any of this type of book fall apart on me yet. That's not to say that they won't, but so far they haven't, and I've been treating them with a fairly firm hand, particularly getting into the spine sections, pushing it down. Okay, now with the dusky purple, you may have remembered in the past I said the further away things are from you, the duller and the bluer toned it looks. The closest they are to you, the brighter and the more yellow or lighter tones they look. Warmer tones, I should say. Cooler tones as you go away, warmer tones as you come in. So with this dusky purple, I'm going to add right at the end there some more purpley kind of cooler tone, and thereby making it look like it's further away from you than it actually, then, you know, I mean, in real life the paper is flat, it's all the same distance from you. This is tricking your eye to make it look like it's further away from you than it actually is. I think it's called chromatic perspective, if you want the technical term. That's using colour to suggest perspective. There. And already, just looking at it before applying the water, you can see you've already got that feeling that this is closer and that's more distant. So let's apply the water from the aqua brush and see what we get. I'll start with the top step. Now I'm going to do each step separately, and that's because there'll be tiny little colour variations as I work, and that will help to separate each step. So what I'll do is I'll just do the alternate steps first so they get to dry a little bit, and then I'll come back and do the ones I haven't done in between. And as I said, this will help to break up the steps so it doesn't look like they're all just on the one plane, because there'll be slight variations in colour between each one. They're very, very light, hardly anything right up here where it's closest to you, and as we go in further away and we join up with that purple, you've got the feeling of distance. Now that was a bit dark, so I'll dab that off. Yep, that's better for me. Alright, so we're up to this step now. Taking it into the purple. A little bit dark there. Take off some of that excess. Right, now we'll do the bottom step. Dusky purple is a good colour to use for this. Another colour that you can use to suggest distance is any of the blues, the duller looking blues. Remember, you don't need very much. Just lighten off with the main colour that you're using, make it lighter, and then put in a darker colour over the top. So lighter up this end, and at this end darker with a darker colour over the top. There we go. Merge this in a little bit at this end, I think. There. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we'll start doing this stony section. Okay, we're ready to start this broken paving. Now I've decided to go a bit darker. I was thinking about doing it light, but I might go for willow as the main colour, and I'll scribble in some shading and texture with the Paynes grey. And we'll see how we go with that. Starting off with the willow, now the way I like to do this is to leave the top bit light and then darken it up as you go down. Like so. It's not quite realistic, but I think it gives a nice look. We'll just do 3 to start with and see how it looks. Okay, now with my Paynes grey, I'm just going to scribble in a little bit of bluish, just a tiny little bit. And I'm really literally am scribbling it in with a few little swirls. I'm not attempting to blend it in because I want the texture to show. Right, starting off at the top because we want that to be the lightest section, and then just little circles down into the colour. There, and as you can see, we've got both colours there, and you can still see the scribbly bits of the Paynes grey, and that will give a bit of texture to the stone. Okay, I'll do that one more time, and then we might speed paint the rest for you so you can just see where I'm going, but you've got the basic idea. Once again, just scribble in some of the willow. Not too dark, I don't want this to be dark and intense. Just make sure you've got a bit of a gradient so it's light at the top and darker at the bottom. Now we're up to the grouting section in between these stones. Now you could either go light for this and just tint it with a bit of colour, or you can go and make it a bit darker. I'm going to go for dark chocolate, but I'm not going to use too much of it. Down the bottom here, I'm going to make it a bit lighter, and then as it recedes back into the distance, I'll make it a bit darker, and I may even throw a bit of Paynes grey into it just to give it that distant look. That's the dark chocolate. Actually, this might be only the second time I've used this pencil. I think what I might do is I might just apply it directly from the tip. So I'll just colour in this bit because I think that's coming up a little, that's nice, but I think I'll get a nicer colour variation if I just pick it up from the tip. That way I'll get a little bit of lights and darks happening. I like to do a little bit darker at the corners. Grab my little sheet to work off the excess so I can smooth that in. Give it a bit of a colour variation. I think this is probably a little bit too purple for my liking. I want to warm that up. You know what? I'm going to put the dark chocolate away, and I'm going to get out some madder brown instead. This is another darker colour, but it's got more of a reddish tint. I think actually that'll look better. Just see. Put it over the top. Yeah, I like that. Personal preference. Yeah, just colour that in. Let's have a look if we go to the straight. Yeah, it's a bit brighter, isn't it? I'll see how I feel about this. If I think it's a bit too bright, I'll go back over it with the dark chocolate just to take out some of that red. But I just think the dark chocolate's just a little bit too purple. Just going to vary the depth of colour in certain areas, so it's a bit lighter in some areas and a bit darker in others to make it look more interesting. Just being careful, trying not to leave any white spots anywhere. That's my dark chocolate again. Use that in here just to darken that shadow a bit. They do work well together for dark and light, don't they? The dark chocolate and the madder brown. Yeah, I like that better. Combination. I'm going to do a combination of the two. That's the Paynes grey. Let's get the violet out again. Don't want this too dark, just a little light tint of purple. As I said, more like a lilac than a violet. Do a check to make sure everything else is complete. We haven't left any spots. I'm going to leave those thorns white. I kind of like them like that. Okay, and I'll pull back and we'll see what else we can do. As you can see, we're just about finished. This is the time that I usually recommend that you go off, make yourself a cup of coffee or a tea, have a sit down somewhere else, do something different for a while, and then come back and look at it again to see if there's anything that jumps out at you that you can see, oh no, that's wrong, I have to touch that up a bit. But I think we're pretty much done here. I think I've done everything I need to do. So we can add a little bit of a sparkle to the picture with a Uniball Signo white gel pen, or any white gel pen that you have which has got good coverage and good flow. And we can dot in a few little bits and pieces and cover up a few little places where we've run over into white space that we don't want. So what I'll do with these bubbles up the top here, so I'm just going to add a few little dots of white to make it look more like bubbles. As you can see here, I've got two or three little dots of white. The smaller ones you can just do one, and with the really small ones just leave them. Careful not to put your hand over the top, they do take a few minutes to dry. Okay, that's the start. We can do these little flashes here, we can do a few little sparkly bits around it. You don't have to do this bit, of course, you can just leave it the way it is, but I like putting a few little sparkles and shines. Like with the gold section up here, just pop a few little dots here to make it look like it's glittering. Just along the border here where you've got that band of white or that band of shine there. Just put a few little dots so it looks like the gold's glittering in the sun. Along these leaves as well. Remember, if you pop any dots where you don't want them, wait for it to dry and then scrape it off with your thumbnail. Along here. And up through here. Okay, we've got a nice glittery looking roof now, all shiny in the sun. Down the bottom here you might want to add a few little dewdrops to your roses. Now I've seen this, there's some lovely tutorials on how to do large drops of water with pencils, and they're very clever, but in this picture I just want to add some little dots instead of just white. There we go. More on the upper surfaces of the rose, don't worry so much about down below. You might want to put the odd one there, but not much. Concentrate on more at the top. And the same with this little flower behind. Let's not leave it out. I think what I'll do with this flower though is I'll just put more dots around the centre bit where you've got the white and give it a little speckled look. There you go, now you've got some white speckling in your flower. put some bigger drops as well on the outsides of the petals. There. Maybe a few little... This will make the leaves look shiny. Just doing a few little lines there, and it'll give the leaves a bit of a shiny surface. Okay, we might do that at the top leaves as well. They're looking a bit left out with all the shiny sparkly bits everywhere else. Oops. Just where the light would hit it the most, in the light green section. That, I think we're done. Well, I hope you've enjoyed following me along in this tutorial and that you're pleased with your results. Remember, keep practicing. Use the same techniques that I've shown you here on other pages if you want, and see what else you can come up with. Well, and until next time we meet again, enjoy the current colouring adventure that you're on, and happy colouring! I hope you're enjoying any colouring adventures that you are currently on, and until next time, happy colouring!